But as we start in Ukraine, Mykhailo Fedorov has rejected an invitation to rejoin the government of President Volodymyr Zelensky. This comes after days of protest and upheaval in Kyiv. It began when Fedorov was dismissed as defense minister last week. Then the man who seemed to be the reason why he was ousted was himself sacked. General Alexander Syrsky replaced as head of Ukraine's army. All the while, of course, the Russian attacks raining down on the country and war still to be won. Fedorov has refused the role of Deputy Prime Minister for Military Innovation. In his 6 months as defense minister, he's credited with accelerating Ukraine's World Envy drone program, as well as cutting down on corruption, making savings of up to $16 billion on the military budget. Let's get more on the situation by bringing in someone who's on the inside. Joining us from Ukraine, Liudmyla Buimister, who's member of the Ukrainian Parliament. Good evening to you. Thank you for being with us. Former battalion commander also in Ukraine's army. Give us your interpretation on what is happening right now in Ukraine, because from the outside, it seems crazy that politicians are arguing and being sacked when national unity is required in order to fight the war.
Good evening. Actually, what we see in Ukraine right now is exactly the demonstration of national unity and the demonstration of how people of Ukraine can unite in the moments when the decisions of those in power are not always justified or not always properly explained. And we should all understand that everything that is happening with the military command and with the Ministry of Defense obviously attracts so much attention, especially from young people, because everybody understands that this has direct impact on the safety and security of every person in Ukraine. The protests that we have seen in the center of Kyiv and in other cities across the country, they demonstrated that people understand actually and feel very well what the country and the armed forces need, and what will be moving forward the war effort in this very crucial point in Ukraine's war and in the situation we are in front of a very, very difficult winter. So people want to see the leaders that they trust and the leaders that have shown their efficiency and their attitude towards their subordinates primarily. So as you mentioned, the commander-in-chief Syrsky, who actually was criticized a lot for many, many years before, was dismissed and replaced by Mykhailo Fedorov, the change that was long awaited, not only by the people on the streets and by civilians, but primarily by the people inside the Ukrainian military. That marks actually a huge step or jump forward in our efforts of reforming Ukrainian military, getting further from the Soviet past and Soviet customs of the Ukrainian armed forces that unfortunately dominated the armed forces of Ukraine during the previous commander-in-chief, and marks a new wave, a new generation of leadership that came to transform the war, to transform the armed forces, to add more technologies on the front line, to change the attitude to the simple soldier. And that's why people demanded that Mr. Fedorov is appointed as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So now it's very uplifting, both for the people inside the military and those who tomorrow can join the military, because every person in Ukraine understands that today or tomorrow they will be the ones who will need to enlist, who will need to join the military, and who will need to fight for our independence and our sovereignty.
The fight against Russia continues, Liudmyla. You're in a position of being a politician, but of course you served in the military, so you've got a unique view on both sides. And I remind people you are an independent MP, so your view is very much right down the middle of the situation as it is right now. What will this mean for Ukraine's military? Will this make things better? I suppose that's the question that everybody's asking from the outside.
Well, obviously, there is no silver bullet that can solve all the problem, and there is no magician in the world that can solve all the problem uh, on the front line right now. Uh, However, that's a very, very positive change because it brings new energy, new leadership, new morale to the troops who are exhausted since 2022, being in constant battle with Russia. It brings really uplifting mood to the civilians who have to live under the missile attacks on daily basis. But also there are things that Mr. Drapati was pushing and trying to push through inside the military, because he's not an outsider for the Ukrainian armed forces. He was the commander of joint forces before he was appointed the commander in chief, and uh, he was already implementing the changes that on his level that people are so much awaiting from the entirety of the armed forces. The introduction of post-mission reviews, the intensifying of drone warfare and bring our soldiers as further from the trenches as possible, introducing more technologies, and actually fixing the practice of managing the armed forces, managing the army corps, unifying them under the single command. So I think we will see a lot of quick results and quick wins. We have already seen in the last 6 months significant successes of Ukrainian armed forces with deep strikes and middle strikes. So that is going to be continuing for sure. And but there is a lot of work that we still need to do to bring our armed forces to the level that we want to see them and to the level that will be capable of winning the war against Russia, because a small Soviet army will never win the war against the big Soviet army. And unfortunately, until now, in some cases, that was exactly the situation.
So that's the importance of the change in the dismissal of Sersky. He's been replaced by, as you say, by Drapati, different approach. Fedorov, though, was in many ways credited for the acceleration of the drone program, the changes that have made a massive impact for Ukraine on the ground. Is his absence from the administration something that is going to be a problem, do you think? Would you prefer to see him brought back in? And let's point out to people, he has refused a job that's been offered to him.
Well, the job that has been offered to him is not really a job because the discussions were around some either made up positions of czars that don't exist in Ukrainian legislation. It's more an American concept in the executive branch, which doesn't exist in our country, or the vice prime minister without the ministry, which also doesn't give authority to the person who wants to implement his program, who wants to really demonstrate the change. It doesn't give the authority and the resources, such as the Ministry of Defense, to be able to pursue these objectives. So it's only natural that now the protests continue, and the main goal of the protests and the main requirement right now is to reinstate Mr. Fedorov as the Minister of Defense. And in my opinion, it's the only right decision that President Zelensky can make. He has to introduce Mr. Fedorov as candidate to the parliament for the position of the Ministry of Defense before the 18th of August. Actually, the parliament can return to voting at any moment. We're not on holiday. It's not true, because I know that there was a lot of speculation that the parliament is on holiday until the end of August. That's not true. We can gather at any moment as soon as the president will introduce the candidate for the Ministry of Defense. Parliament understands that it's a crucial moment, and the country cannot run with acting heads of the crucial ministries, such as Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense, that don't have their legally appointed heads right now.
Very quickly, Liudmyla, because we're out of time, but I need to ask you this question. Did Volodymyr Zelensky make a big mistake in getting rid of Fedorov?
For sure. Short answer, of course. In the country at war, where we don't have election for 7 years, and in a country like Ukraine, where direct democracy was always an important element of governance, the reaction of the people was exactly like natural. And I think Mr. Zelensky should think twice about his policy of managing the people that he's appointing to the important positions during the war.
And what is important too is that the people were allowed to protest, allowed to show they disagreed, allowed to take to the streets peacefully and show exactly what they thought, which of course is a great step in the direction of democracy. Liudmyla, thank you so much for being with us. Liudmyla Buimister, who's a member of the Ukrainian parliament, that's the Verkhovna Rada in Kyiv, and also a former battalion commander in Ukraine's army, with the analysis of the changes that are taking place in Kyiv right now. We, of course, are watching for all developments. And thanks again to Liudmyla Buimister.